Hey, good afternoon, everyone. This is Charlie Pankey again with Sierra Rec Magazine. Thank you for joining our Sierra Rec Now podcast, and we hope the Sierra is within your sight today, whether you're ready to go out hiking or fishing or looking for the nearest waterfall. We hope to bring you great resources and tools every day. Thanks for joining our podcast this year as we continue to explore the Sierra and introducing many businesses and different adventure locations in the Sierra. Today, we're super excited as we head north to Lake Almanor again. I know I've done a couple Lake Almanors, but I've got Captain Bryan Roccucci on the phone today. I've got a little feedback here. Sorry about that. And we're going to be talking fishing on Lake Almanor in the Northern California area. Hi, Bryan. How's it going today?
Hey, Charlie, how are you?
Good, good. Got a little light on your sound there.
Okay.
There we go. Perfect. That sounds good. You're out on the boat on the lake today, huh?
Yeah, that's right. We're coming to you live recorded or recorded live, whatever we're doing, podcasting from the wheelhouse of the boat, tied up in the beautiful Plumas Pines Marina.
That's fantastic. I got to go out on that marina last spring and go bass fishing for the first time. It was the first time on a lake. That lake is beautiful to be on.
Yeah, yeah,
So you've been fishing up there for what 30 years now on Lake Almanor?
yeah. This is my 27th season that we're just getting underway.
That is fantastic. Lake Almanor, if I'm not mistaken, it's got a huge trout population, and is it a fishery also?
Yeah, that's really. I mean, Almanor has a bass fishery as well, but it is known as one of the top trophy trout destinations in Northern California. And both rainbows, browns, and king salmon make up the cold water fishery that we have here in the lake. And quite frankly, it's pretty unbelievable the fish that this lake kicks out.
That's awesome, and it's open year round, correct? In Lake Almanor, so you can fish all year.
Right? Yeah. For as far as the trout fishing goes, it's one of the rare occasions where we see a lake in high up in the Sierras, and we're about a 4,500-foot elevation here at the lake that has both access by vehicle and is open by fishing regulations. For instance, Eagle Lake to the north closes down, and most of the other lakes that are this high or higher, you can't get to except by snow machine or snowmobile. But here we've got a couple of state highways that sort of surround the lake with 89 on the west shore, 147 on the east shore, and 36 across the top by Chester through Chester. So access to get here is pretty good. Of course, big winter storms and stuff will limit it. But I'm basically able to run trips here February through December, and sometimes even in December and January if I don't decide to take too much time off.
I guess I probably should have said that ahead of time. You're with Big Daddy Guide Service up there in the lake, and you've been running your boats up there on the lake. Did you have a charter this morning? Is that why you're out fishing, or do you just fish on your own spare time every time you get a chance?
No, there's not much spare time. I amass about 300 days a year on the water
That's
with
fantastic.
and we had a charter today. These guys have been fishing with me for 12. We were trying to think back. They've been fishing with me 12 or 13 years now, and every Friday and Saturday of Mother's Day weekend, they're a standing order for this guy's trip. So
Fantastic.
good, had a good run on them this morning. Nice browns. Had one king salmon. Caught and released almost everything, and looking forward to another nice day tomorrow. We're kind of coming out the last 3 days. We've had some pretty severe winds we've been dealing with out here on
Hmm.
the, and it's been made difficult conditions for us, but we've been still managing to get fish. And so this was the first day that was more mild with the wind, and we're looking forward to even a more calm day tomorrow.
Yeah, the weekend should be really nice up north. That Lake Almanor, that's one of the things that caught me last year is how big that lake is when you're on the water. I mean, it's a really large, lake. So when the winds come in, I imagine the afternoons get pretty rocky up there at times.
Yeah, yeah. Depending on which direction it blows and where you're at on the lake, you can build some pretty good swells.
Yeah.
And it's kind of typical to find unless you've got a storm front moving in, you find some calmer water in the morning followed by some breezier afternoons. That's pretty typical. The last few days, we've had 4-foot rollers coming down the lake first thing in the morning that we had to get through to get to the calmer side of the lake.
Wow. Okay. Hey, one of the
Definitely,
things that caught my attention on your website, and I'm not a fisherman, so I'm going to be a little novice here on for you today. But you make a kind of an emphasis on light tackle fishing. Can you
yeah.
explain to me what that is?
Well, so first off, let me start by saying, since we're talking Lake Almanor here,
Yeah.
this will totally ruin your perception on what a nice fish is.
Yeah, I
The
bet.
average trout that we catch here at almost any other lake in the Sierras would be a monster that they would be talking about for years. So right off the bat, you're starting with a big quality grade of fish, and it goes up to in my opinion, world class trophy brown fishing here.
Okay.
Uh, the rods and reels and things that we're using sometimes as low as 4 pound test, most of the time 6 pound leaders. We've got long, light rods that feel like light fly rods in your hands. And so the average fish put up quite a battle. The larger fish put up really good battles. And sometimes it feels like you brought the proverbial knife to a gunfight, because there's really nothing you can do when you have one of the real big trophies on except wear them out and get them tired. So it just enhances the whole experience. It's a lot of fun. You can feel every movement they make. Right now we've got good water quality, clarity,
Hmm.
so fish down 12 and 14 feet where we're fighting them, and you're able to not only feel the sensation coming through your hand, but you can actually see the movement that's giving you the sensation that you're feeling through the hand. So it's anything but just cranking them in. You actually have to play these fish out. So,
Yeah, I remember it had the clarity of the water last spring when I was there. That I think we were only about 10 to 12 foot of water, but you could see the bottom the entire time. It was quite a fun experience to be able to look in the water and see fish swimming around.
yeah, it's been great the last couple of years. We've had these great winters, that have well, matter of fact, it was whiteout snow last Saturday a week ago.
Yeah, it
So
was.
it was interesting. And that it all helps the health of the lake. Though we got, we're right now we're sitting as of today's date, which what is it, the 10th of May?
Yep.
We are 2 feet from maximum pool, and one
Okay.
1 foot from the maximum level that it got last year. They stopped 1 foot short last year.
That's
So
fantastic.
yeah, but then you've got that constant snow belt coming that just keeps that fresh water rolling down the tributaries into this lake, which helps everything, the health of the lake and the whole thing.
Yep. That lake, the area I was in, it had a pretty clean bottom. There was some grass, but it was pretty clean. I imagine you've got sections that are more grass fishing, other sections are maybe old tree stumps. I'm just kind of spitballing here from old experience of fishing, but what do you have different styles of fishing around the lake?
There is, and because I'm here for so much of the year, we utilize 3 or 4 different techniques, and some very small differences in those techniques throughout the year to stay on the fish. But I'm also kind of a fly fisherman
Oh.
uh, as well. And not that I run fly fishing trips here on this lake, I do it at the neighboring Eagle Lake in the fall. But there's a saying that fly fishermen and people have, which is match the hatch. And I kind of
Hmm.
translate that style of fishing to the boat charters that we're doing. So I spend a lot of the year following the food sources that these fish feed on, and sort of by default you end up finding the fish. Right now, the lake is in as kind of transition. It's at the end of its transition where they're feeding on the minnows in the lake throughout the winter. We've got some incredible aquatic bug hatches that happen here at Lake Almanor, and those have started and are starting to ramp up. So a good portion of the fish are switching to that aquatic bug diet. And
Okay.
that's part of what you have to have good genetics to make good fish,
Hmm.
but you also have to have the food to support those genetics and metabolisms. And this place is an absolute food factory across the board and year round. Whenever there's something that's not happening, there's always something to sort of take its place and give those fish something to feed on.
Mm.
And that's really how lucky we are to see the type of fish that are here. Um, but if you can imagine this place, back to your topography question, originally Lake Almanor was called Big Meadows, and I don't want to
Oh,
geek out too much on it because I'm kind of a history nerd when it comes to a lot of places, including here. But
cool.
uh, known as Big Meadows, and if you imagine most meadows that you can visually look at that aren't flooded, They're basically kind of flat, not a lot of
Hmm.
changes. They might have a creek or two running through them, which have a little channel, and then some timber around it. And maybe there's a high spot in the middle of a meadow that has some timber. And this place was no different. It was just vast. It was just a big area like that. So there are some shallower spots out in the lake that have some mold stumps on them. There's some rocky shorelines and rock piles that are out in the lake. Some of it volcanic because of our close proximity to Mount Lassen. It's right here in
Hmm.
the. They can't quite see it through the windows with the glare on the back of the wheel. But if it wasn't there, you'd see it. Um, and overall, a very shallow lake. One of the most common mistakes when people first come up here is they see this big, huge body of water, and they think, "Oh, it must be incredibly deep." But in reality, right now it averages 40 to 60 feet deep and across most of the lake with very little change. And you've got one little patch down by the dam, about a mile off the dam, where some of the channels came together before it left into the canyon, where you'll see about 100 feet deep right now. And
Really?
that's
Okay.
it.
That's a lot different. Cause I think size wise, I think it's comparable to. I don't know how comparable is Lake Tahoe, but Lake Tahoe is a deep lake where you guys have that more shallow experience. That's good to know. So now
Yep.
you don't fish just Lake Almanor though. You fish Bucks Lake and Davis Lake and Eagle Lake, right?
Yeah, I've been out of the loop a little bit for the last few years at Davis, but that used to be one of my stops. Doesn't mean I won't get back in the loop there. Bucks Lake, I do a lot of fishing summertime. There again, they just plowed the road a couple of days ago
Yep.
to the lake, so that's a restricted access because of winter conditions. Um, do a lot of kokanee fishing there in the summertime. It's got a pretty kokanee population. As far as I'm concerned, they're the best eating fish that swim in the Sierras.
Okay.
So people love they put up a good fight. The action's good, and they're fantastic to eat. So people love that kind of stuff in the summer. And then Eagle Lake in the fall, a little bit in September, some in October, and then basically the whole month of November, I stay over there and run trips, and that's really prime time to be at Eagle.
Okay. What's the difference of the fish and eagle?
Over there it's all what they call Eagle Lake rainbows, which is
Oh,
the most widely distributed species of rainbow. We actually utilize Eagle Lake rainbows a lot of the times in our Almanor Fishing Association pen project over on the east side of the lake. Um, but that's their native home, so that's what's in. It's all Eagle Lake rainbows where you have multiple species here at Almanor.
gotcha. I've kind of always known this since I lived in the Sierra a little bit, but people travel quite a distance to come to Lake Almanor in that area to fish, right? You guys are pretty well known for your fishing. I mean, you got guests from all over the world coming in, or you got mostly San Francisco people coming over. What's your typical guest list look like?
Yeah, I mean, I would say the bulk of the people probably range, like if we drew some outlying boundaries, let's say, Bay Area to Stockton. Of course, I had a bunch of people from Fresno on the other day, but
Yep.
uh, over to Reno and then up to Redding, the Oregon border, that
Okay.
direction.
So
Um,
drivable distance.
Plenty of Southern California, out of state, a few from Europe. We're all over the board.
All aboard. Very fun. The one things that always catches my eye when I'm at the lake, like that senior you're talking about with Lassen back there, but there's also a huge bird population there. So there's always wild birds and hawks and eagles and all kinds of stuff flying around the lake, which is always a great experience. So,
Yep.
but before the call here, we talked about you have a Veterans Day event or coming up, part of the association. You want to tell people a little bit about the event coming up for veterans?
You bet. So we're the lake itself and the community here at Lake Almanor and Chester and the surrounding towns is extremely lucky to have. If I want to kind of toot our horn here a little bit, they have an organization that's been going for about 40 years here, which is called the Almanor Fishing Association.
Mm-hmm.
And 38, 39 years ago, was started by two gentlemen that used to own a resort that no longer exists over on the East Shore called Lassen View Resort. It was kind of a
Okay.
place, Ruben and Jim. Unfortunately, Ruben's not with us any longer, but Jim is still an honorary board member of the group. And they had the foresight and wherewithal with them, along with a couple other avid local fishermen and community support people, to start this nonprofit organization. And one of the first things that they undertook was a cage raised or pen raised trout program
Okay.
right in the water of Lake Almanor. So you can see it from the Hamilton Branch Bridge just down from 147. If you drive across, it
Mm-hmm.
looks like a big floating dock complex out there. But every year, our association raises 50,000 rainbow trout in 10 of the pens, and somewhere between 8 and 15,000 fertile brown trout in the other two pens. It's a 12 pen complex. So it is regarded and ranked as the longest running, most successful cage raised trout program in the state of California. So that goes a long way
Great.
here. But over the years, the Almanor Fishing Association, while obviously focusing on fishing and fish and the lake,
Mm-hmm.
sort of developed into a larger encompassing community organization. We enjoy tremendous support from the community around here. And some of the outreach that we do is we do scholarships to graduating high school kids. We support a program that was started by our biologist from Fish and Game, Amber Mauser, called Fishing the Fourth Grade. So once a year, every fourth grade student in Plumas County goes fishing for a day, and it's a great deal. They bring in a truck, of course, and plant a bunch of hungry trout, and then the next hour or next day, depending on where it's at, we bring the kids in, and our organization is just thrilled to be able to have the opportunity to supply her with some of the manpower to pull that off. And
Wow.
about, I'm gonna probably guess wrong, but I'm going to guess 3 or 4 years ago, one of our longtime serving board members, in fact, the president, came up with an idea that wouldn't it be cool if we'd be able to supply every fourth grader with a brand new rod and reel? So since then, through the generosity of some donors, our association has literally bought. We just picked them up the other day for this year. Um, Rod reel combos, brand new, ready to fish. And at the end of their day out fishing with the Fishing the Fourth Grade program, every one of them get a brand new rod and reel to take home. And it's our hope that that sparks some interest and get them interested in the outdoors and fishing specifically.
I love that. Love that.
That's a great youth outreach program that we're proud to be assisting Amber with. And then, gosh, I should know this. Like 8 years ago, 9 years ago, I forget where we're at in the scheme of
Mm-hmm.
things. Um, we had a place that unfortunately was taken away from us by the fire that was a pretty special place here called Quail Lodge.
Okay.
Uh, a few of us that called it home officially or unofficially were sitting around one afternoon, and I believe it was a guy by the name of Duncan, who's a huge supporter of ours, said, what we ought to do is we ought to get a bunch of veterans and take them fishing. And we said, that sounds like a fantastic idea. Let's do this. So, from very humble beginnings, which was contact a few veterans that we know, put them on the boats, take them out fishing, and then hustle back to the lodge so we could get barbecues fired up and have a little barbecue for them, has now expanded. Like I think, of course, we had to take a year off for COVID.
Mm-hmm.
I think we're this is our 8th year coming up, but it might only be our 6th. You know that. And it's turned into the premier veterans fishing event that happens in Northern California. Last year, we had just over 130 veterans on 55 boats on the water
Wow.
fishing. And it's quite a sight. And at 11:30 in the morning, we meet over at a place near the West Shore what's technically called Goose Island. We call it Flag Island because there's a flagpole on it with an American flag. And right now, it's not even an island. The water's so high, it's covered.
It's
And we
covered.
do we do a bit of a boat parade by that and video it. We've got drones overhead filming it, and then we all head back to Rec One. And with the help of our partners, Pacific Seafoods is a huge supporter of ours. Uh, the Elks Lodge in Chester brings out the manpower to serve the barbecue and lunch, and then just a tremendous amount of support to supply a fantastic array of raffle prizes that every veteran gets a ticket for. And basically, every veteran's leaving with something. But we've got everything from
That's great.
fishing trips and guided hunts to gourmet hot sauces, Yeti products. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
Duncan, the gentleman I mentioned, that's one of the founders of this, he makes some unbelievable handmade fishing rods that he does in red, white, and blue patriotic patterns. I think I recently he's got 10 of those ready to go for that raffle. So it's our pleasure and our honor to show those guys the best time we can. And I just got word yesterday that we have exceeded last year's numbers, and we're still about 7 weeks out.
That is
So
fantastic.
it really is something special.
And a whole community event, right? So it's a group of guys sitting around a table, came with an idea. Now the entire community is bought into it,
it
and
is.
it's a service project, really. So
And we can't, we enjoy the community support. We'll also get outside support from other veterans groups such as Field of Dreams. One of our partners in almost everything we do here is PG&E.
mm-hmm.
We've got some veteran groups that are, for instance, one of the hot sauce company in South Carolina, the General's Hot Sauce. You fantastic hot sauces that show up, and they're glass frag grenades. The bottles look like grenades.
Okay.
Vets love that. We do a custom design T-shirt every year, so all the boat captains and all the veterans get an updated custom T-shirt each year. And this year, one of our guys rented the group campsite over on Highway 89 here off the West Shore, and so that instead of just being available for a couple of nights, is available like Tuesday to Monday for any veteran that wants
Nice.
to camp or bring free of charge. And he's also scheduled another barbecue. So this is rapidly turning into like almost Veterans Week, which is just awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
And what's the dates on that again?
so that is always the Saturday following Father's Day. This year it's June 22nd.
Second. Yep.
So I guess I'm not sure when this is going to air, but
In 2 weeks. So.
well, bottom line from this point forward, any veteran that would like to come up and participate in this, we'd love to have them. They can track us down through AFA's Facebook or website, which is almanorfishingassociation.org.
I'll put a link down in the description for everybody on the video. So
I'm all over the place as a web presence and social media
mm-hmm.
at Big Daddy's Guide Service. That's also a great way to sort of check in. I don't get a chance to update the website as much as I do the social media, so Instagram and Facebook's a pretty good gauge of exactly what's going on and what we're doing on the water.
Yeah, I saw you have live fish reports on there too, so you're telling people what's going on in the lake all the time, which is great. So, well, it almost feels anticlimactic to go back to fishing after that. That's such a great event. But I do have some fun fishing stories I want to ask. You've got to have some whopper stories of fish that you've pulled in and out of that lake. You got any fun stories that the guests might be interested in hearing about fish on Lake Almanor?
Oh man, fun fish stories. Let's see where to begin. It's easy to tell fish stories, right?
Exactly.
Make them as big as you want to make them. There's no proof, but gosh, as impressive as it is, you can't land them all. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
We've seen some monster fish slowly swim away from the boat that didn't make it to the net over the years. Here's a fairly quick one that's a funny story.
Yep.
So my regular guys is a total degenerate big brown fisherman, and he's up here like 2 to 3 days a week for 6 or 8 weeks straight in the springtime.
Okay.
On the boat hunting with the sole purpose of trying to get a big brown. So all the years he's fished with me, the 10-pound mark, the double-digit mark, is something really special in the trophy trout fishing community, right?
Mm-hmm.
So all the years he's fished with me, which is like 16 or 17, he's had lots of 7s, lots of 8s, lots of 9s. He's never got across that 10 mark until this year. So we head out with him and one of his old good friends that hasn't been on the boat for about 6 or 7 years. And the first bite of the morning we get, Steve, his buddy, gets a 10-pound, 4-ounce brown. Release, we do a lot of release with these fish almost exclusively. So after a couple of quick pictures and getting the weight, the fish swam away. And, as happy as John was for his friend, it's not lost on him. He's been putting in a lot of time and effort, and he wants a 10-pounder. So the last fish of that day, we switched techniques. It was kind of a transition time here on the lake.
Mm-hmm.
And exact same spot that he had about 100 feet of line ripped off by some monster fish the year before that then broke us off. We never saw that fish, but it was powerhouse. He hooked up with a fish and landed his first one over 10. So
That's
that's
awesome.
quite a way to not only cap the day of fishing off with a couple over 10 in the same day for two great guys, but to get it out of the hole where one really, kind of broke his heart the year before made it special. So, needless to say, he was a pretty happy camper. And when he came back a week later, the last fish of the day in a totally different spot in the lake was even bigger than the first one. So he got his second double-digit fish this year.
There you go.
Yeah, so that's kind of
New
quick.
standard. You said something interesting story, and I love the story. Thanks for sharing that. It's you said something about the lake transitioning. And
Yes.
I remember bass fishing last year. They said the same thing about the lake transitions. Can you explain to average fishermen what that means to the lake transitions?
Okay, so there's a couple things. It's not lake turnover. That's a whole different subject. But by transitioning, it could be several different things. So the lake is transitioning right now, and sort of at the back end of the transition, where the fish are switching from a primarily minnow-based diet to the aquatic bug diet. So that's a
Okay.
trend happening right now at the lake. What I was speaking to in that story is, um, during the wintertime, coming out of winter, February, January, very condition driven. It's hard to put a date on a calendar and say, this is what it's going to be like on this date, because you never know what Mother Nature has in store from year to year.
Right.
So, typical in the winter, the fish are feeding on minnows. They're out over mostly open water.
Mm-hmm.
And so we use certain techniques to work those fish and work those areas that hold bait and hold the fish. And so that's what we were doing first thing in the morning, when Steve, I forget, it was either the first week of March or last week of February when that story happened. Um, that's what we started out with that morning. But there comes a time when the minnows start heading for the shoreline and the rocky structure, and also out over the open water rock piles as well, not just the rocky shorelines.
Gotcha.
And the reason they're doing that is they use those rocks for cover, to hide for safety, but they also are sort of in pre-spawn mode themselves. The minnows have to spawn to regenerate their population. So that time of year is notorious, the late February, March, early April timeframe, for almost exclusively a brown trout catch. Almost every fish we catch on a daily basis is a brown, and that's for a couple of reasons. The rainbows are up spawning, so the rainbows are up the river, and not many of them in the lake. The browns start to move towards those rocky areas, hunting those pond smelt that are in there hiding. And so we change the technique and we start fishing very shallow and in those rocky areas. And so that's what, like, I meant, that transition from the open water to more of the shallow water
That makes sense.
starting. But that said, John and a lot of the other guys that fish with me, they love that shallow water technique. It's really a lot of fun.
Cool.
Not always the most productive, but it does yield some incredible results as far as the quality of the fish. And so a lot of those guys I refer to as my hero or zero crowd, as they're coming here, and their mind isn't focused on how many fish are we going to catch today. Their mind is focused on, can we get that one big bite of that special fish? And if you go into a day of fishing like that, you also have to prepare yourself that you're not going to get that bite. And
Mm-hmm.
so different mindset of people that, like I said, I refer to John and a few of those guys as like degenerate. That's all they think of catch. And it's awesome. It's awesome to see that excitement and enthusiasm. And it's, I don't dislike it either, because I'm all about that same attitude. And
Awesome.
to see big monster fish get caught, put big smiles on people's faces and a big splash as they swim away to get bigger. And I'll tell you one more. Do we have time for another story?
We're running up on the 30-minute mark, but go ahead. I think my audience will love another story.
So, trolling shallow after a day of trolling over the.
Oh, all right. Looks like maybe I just lost. There you go. You're back? Oh, well, no sound there, Bryan. Hey, Bryan, I don't have any sound for you. So we've lost audio. Folks, so I'm going to see. We'll give him a second here so he can pop in here. And got any audio yet? Nope. All right, folks. Well, I'll tell you what we're going to do here. I'm going to go ahead and connect with Bryan here. We'll maybe catch up with him later, get this story. But we want to thank you today for joining us on our podcast. And I'll share some details and links to the association and its fishing charter down below. But next time you're up in Lake Almanor, look up Bryan and Big Daddy Fishing Services. I think that looks like that would be a great thing to do on the lake, get those trophy trout. And thank you for joining us again. Hope the Sierra is in your future today, and we'll see you guys next week on our podcast. Have a great day.